Good evening. My name is Imani Rupert Gordon, and I'm the Executive Director for Affinity Community Services. Affinity is a social justice organization, and we work with Black LGBTQ women and other LGBTQ communities of color on the south side of Chicago. We're excited to be here tonight. But before we get started, I want to say thank you so much for Erica, who is answering phones. Remember, this is a call-in show, so if you are interested in being part of the discussion, if you have a question or a comment, you can call in and Erica will put you right through. So for our guest today, we have Nicole Jordan, and Nicole is the Director of Organizing at the United Congress of Community and Religious Organizations Coalition. They're a grassroots organization that's entirely led by people of color and is distinctly positioned to mobilize people, policy, and ideals as it works to better create living conditions for all American families by advancing a transformative shared policy agenda for change. Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Lovely. So let's jump right in. Nicole, could you first introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your professional trajectory and how you ended up at United Congress?
Absolutely. Again, thank you so much for having me here. So I have been at United Congress for about 2 years now in a direct capacity. I started United Congress directly in January of 2016. Prior to working at United Congress, I worked at Target Area Development Corporation for about 6 years, who is also a founding organization of the coalition. I often say that my career trajectory chose me, right? I didn't choose to become a community organizer or anything like that. I didn't choose nonprofit. I actually thought that when I graduated from college that I would become a police officer or some federal agent. I was a law enforcement major. And so my first job was actually an investigator fresh out of college. And I landed in community organizing primarily because I became involved in a campaign to redirect African Americans and Latinos or other people of color away from being incarcerated for having substance abuse issues, because oftentimes, as many people know, communities of color and particularly African Americans are directly targeted and sent to prison at higher rates than other communities. And so the campaign was to be able to redirect African Americans and Latinos and other communities of color into drug schools as opposed to being incarcerated for substance abuse issues. And that was in 2006 when I became involved with that campaign, and the rest is history.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Nicole. I appreciate it. I'm also wondering if you can share a bit more about United Congress. Why was this, why and how was this organization started, and what informs your work when you're there?
So United Congress was established in 2005 by a couple of organizations that came together across Black and Brown communities. And it was established because what has happened traditionally is that when you think about cross-cultural coalitions, it's more transactional, right? It's more we come together to get something accomplished, and then everyone goes back into their separate corners. And so when United Congress started in 2005, first it was 5 years of just conversations and relationship building strategies to break down the silos and the barriers that keep African American and Latinos and other communities of color from really developing strong transformational relationships that stand the test of time and allows for more in-depth fighting together. And so United Congress works on the premise of understanding that winning alone is nothing more than delayed failure. And what that means is that a lot of times, and what happens is that one group or one community will obtain a win, a policy win, or some other kind of win at the expense of another community of color. And that's not fair. And so when you think about it, we are stronger together. And so all of the work that we do is always rooted in racial equity and human rights, because at the end of the day, we're all human, and a lot of the things that oppress our communities and keep us divided are human rights violations, right? And so when we get past color and cultural differences and what community you come from, at the end of the day, we're all being oppressed and we're stronger together.
Great. I really like the way that you all do your work. You had said earlier, you had talked about the importance of relationship building, and I think that is beautiful. You spent so much time being really intentional about it, which is impressive. That's not something we hear all the time. And I wanted to ask, you made a distinction between being transformational and transactional.
Yes.
Could you go into a little more detail about that?
Absolutely. So transactional means exchange, right? I do you a favor, you do me a favor. We come together, we get the job done, everyone goes home, and if we have an issue that comes up and we may have to work together, it's more of an exchange. You do something for me, I do something for you. That's the transaction. When you think about transformation, it's changing the way you think about the communities that you're working with, right? And so when we change the way that we think about those who we're working with, it changes our approach to the work in general, as a whole. And so it doesn't matter if, I, as an African American, go out to fight for a Latino bill or a Asian bill. It doesn't matter if there's no skin in the game for me as African American. The fact that we are together means that your skin in the game is my skin in the game, right?
Oh, that's beautiful. I love hearing that. Love hearing that. So I wanted to ask you too, because I know that United Congress is working with Grassroots Alliance for Police Accountability, and I know that you do some work with that organization as well. And I'm wondering, what does this partnership allow you to accomplish more effectively since you're working together?
So yeah, I serve as the coordinator for the Grassroots Alliance for Police Accountability as well, and for short we call it GAPA. So that's a mouthful.
GAPA. Okay.
And so I think when I think about coalitions in general, the beauty of coalitions is that it extends your reach. You have people working together to get something accomplished, and we all have a mission and that we're driving towards. And so when you think about coalitions, and so GAPA is a 10-member coalition that literally is the width and the breadth of Chicago, from the north side to the south side, east and west. We kind of hit most of the marginalized communities in some capacity. And so I think with United Congress, and particularly for me and my involvement as coordinator of GAPA, understanding the plight of where we are as a city and really as a nation when it comes to police accountability and those issues, it's not just, African American community is directly impacted by it, but it's not just the African American community. It's marginalized communities throughout the city of Chicago. And so with me coming from an understanding from a United Congress perspective of making sure that all of us are brought together to the finish line and all of us have a win, I think that it gives us the power to really understand the needs and the concerns of every single community. I think about the undocumented community and how they have to suffer in silence, and wanting to make sure that they have a voice, so that when you need the police and those who are supposed to protect and serve, that they are there and they're there to do what they're supposed to do. And I think that the other part of it is that when you have a coalition as large as ours, as far as GAPA is concerned, with organizations who are rooted and grounded in criminal justice reform and other police accountability work, and have decades of experience with legitimate grassroots organizing, and have their hands and their feet on the ground, you're able to get a groundswell of support from the marginalized communities to not only fight for the changes that they want, right? Because we all know there is no white horse coming in to save our communities. It's not happening. But we're able to engage community members, build community leaders, and then educate and empower them so that they can be the change that they need for their own communities, particularly when it relates to police accountability.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for saying it like that. I think that sometimes it's lost that when we're doing activism and advocacy work, it's oftentimes making things better. It's not only breaking all systems down, but it's also working in communities and making things better. So thanks so much for making that distinction for us. I'm wondering, so who reaches out to you? What kind of organizations or individuals, how do they get support from your organization at United Congress?
So United Congress is a coalition, so our base is our coalition members, right? And so United Congress is an 8-member coalition, and again, I think that the organizations that are represented in United Congress represent a very wide spread across Chicago as well as some of the west suburbs. And so if you point me to someone that would like to become connected with our work, I can probably point you to an organization that's involved with the United Congress that has our values, and then that is the way that, if they would like to come in through there, or they can also just reach out, and email me and say, hey, would like to know what's next. And you can email me at mjordan@unitedcongress.org. But we are definitely open to people who want to know more about cross-cultural, cross-religion, organizing and relationship building. That's something I did leave off, was not only are we cross-cultural, but we're also cross-religion. We have Christians and Muslims working together and within our coalition. We have Black, Brown, and now Korean community is also part of the coalition. So we try to really break down barriers and build up the power to tear down structural racism.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. So, what are the things that come up that challenges United Congress in achieving the goals and outcomes that you're looking for? What are the things that make your work difficult?
Whew. Yes, Lord. So, I think, when we think about what's happening, whether we think about what's happening at the citywide level with the amount, like the police accountability issues, the level of violence that we have. You think about the state level, the budget crisis that crushed, particularly marginalized communities. And you think about the federal level with all of the rhetoric that came down and all of the divisiveness that came down, and all of the policy things that came down. Those are the things. So when we think about the work that we do, those things impact our coalition members. And no coalition, a coalition is only as strong as its membership, right? It's its members. And so when one of us hurt, all of us have to hurt together. And so, when I think about the budget crisis, and when you have members of your coalition that rely a little bit more heavily on state contracts that dried up, right? Because of the budget crisis, we have to wrap our arms around them and make sure that they're okay. Because United Congress is a family, and so we don't leave anyone behind and say, well, you're not doing good, so you're to the corner, right? No, we wrap around them and try to figure out how we can lift up that organization so that all of us can win together, right?
Yeah.
And so I think just even when I think about all the fires that we have to put out, we're always putting out fires, just here and there, just things that are constantly rising and things that we have to think about. And the more that we have to think about the things that are happening on the ground every single day, and making sure that, our kids are getting to school safely, and that, we have health care and things like that. There's so much stuff happening in the federal level that, we can't necessarily focus on, because we're trying to make sure that the people who we are touching immediately can have their immediate needs met, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much for giving those concrete examples. I think so often we hear, with this administration, there are things that are more difficult, and think, with having such a hard time getting a budget passed, that's really difficult. But you're outlining very specific reasons. Really appreciate you doing that. So we talked about some challenges, and I'm wondering, what do you need to make your work go smoother? What would make it easier?
More money. So.
Yes, a lot more money.
A lot more money. But beyond that, I think that the one thing that bothers me as a nation is that we are a nation of othering, right? Everyone else needs their problem solved, but we don't acknowledge the problems that we have here in the U.S. For example, we police human rights and justices in other countries as though we don't have human rights and justices right here in America, right? You think about education disparities and how kids are in Pennsylvania or, pick your eastern New York, compare to kids in Mississippi, right? Who are probably like really vying for a better education, like the education funding. You think about, the mass incarceration that happens, particularly to the black community, and also impacts the Latino community. And then you have, you think about just here in Illinois, where we take, we export mass amount of African Americans and hold them in other parts of the state, and then we release those same individuals back into 6, 7 primary communities within Chicago with limited access to jobs, limited access, not jobs, but jobs that are living wage that they can actually support their family and their children. And so we dump people on top of each other and tell them, hey, figure it out. Right? That's an injustice. And so when we think about, how much, and even on a more basic level, if you go up north and you ride up under any viaduct, you see rows of individuals who are living in tents. And we're the richest country, right? And so, but we're very quick to say everyone else needs to get it together, as though we don't need to get it together ourselves. And I think that if we could really start thinking about that in a very real and a very intentional way, that would help our job a lot.
That makes all the sense. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So this is a fun question. So what is the work that you are most proud of that you've done at United Congress to date?
So I think I have 2 examples. One is for just United Congress as a whole, and then one that I was directly involved.
Okay.
So I think the thing that I'm probably the most proud of to date, as a United Congress moment in history, is that I think 7 years ago, 8 years ago, one of our member organizations, which is the Inner City Muslim Action Network, had their, they fast Ramadan, they had their iftar, the community iftar. And the iftar was actually held at one of the member churches, Ambassadors for Christ, right? And so, which is this 2,000-seat theater on the south side of Chicago. And for the first time, I think, ever that I've seen, you had 1,700 Muslims in a Christian establishment, right? And we broke bread together, and we had iftar together. And so you don't see that, and that's breaking down those barriers of, this is your religion, this is my religion, this is your culture, this is my culture, and saying, no, we can all break bread together, and we can all make change together. So I think that's like a United Congress moment in history. My personal moment in history is working on the temporary driver's license bill. And I think it was my first time, being able to influence legislation, particularly Black legislators, to help them to understand the importance of supporting a bill that is seemingly only benefiting the Latino community. So a lot of times, we do our work in the community, and we work on a grassroots level, but we have to pass policy, right? And so we have to interact with legislators, and so sometimes the things that we're doing on the ground doesn't translate up. But that was the one time that I was able, that was my first time, not my one time, my first time of experiencing, being able to have negotiations and say, look, I get it, but we need to support each other. And I think that, the passage of that bill, and that gives people, the ability, particularly, yes, the undocumented community, who we think about just like the undocumented that come from Mexico or the southern region of the Americas, who have a waiting list that is crazy to become a citizen. And individuals just want to go to work and provide for their families, and to have to be in a situation where I can get caught driving while brown, not driving while black, right? But then that's the parallel. It's the driving while brown, and if I roll over a stop sign, I could potentially get caught up in deportation proceedings because I was just trying to go to work to feed my families. And it's very parallel to the experiences of the African American community that we all know about, of driving while black and being stopped and unnecessarily searched, and then potentially ended up being in Cook County or in state lockup and separated from your family, right? So I think that was it's like my personal moment.
Yeah, I remember, the first times that I realized that movements are they're connected, that they're not the same, but they are connected,
Exactly.
and injustices happen, and, when we're able to support everyone, we're supporting the ways that when we support everyone, we're also supporting our own right to justice as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, are there other ways to get involved with your organization?
There's always something going on. It's never a dull moment.
Right.
And so I think that, like I said, you can always contact me directly. Send me an email if you would like to know more about things that United Congress is doing as a whole. We host lived experiences, and we host different trainings. We have racial equity training and policy training that kind of helps people to understand the difference between micro and macro level racism, right? And
Yes.
thinking about, how do you break down structural racism to a way that is tangible and that you understand what you're fighting against. Because if we don't understand what we're fighting against, we're grabbing at the air. And, and all those things you can be found on our website as well. So if people are interested in knowing more about, the trainings that we do, or, just the policy that we work on, and ways that they can become community leaders, either with us or with our member organizations, please feel free to reach out.
Wonderful. So, is there anything else that you'd like us to know before we sign off?
Yeah, so I think that my last word of wisdom is, I think I often say whenever I do panel discussions or talk to community members in any large session, I try to impress upon people that you don't have to make a major splash. Right? A lot of times people want to help, they want to do something, they want to make a change. But making a change doesn't mean that you have to leave your job and go to work for a nonprofit. I mean, you want to, we could take
you,
right? But it doesn't have to be that, right? But it takes each one of us to become empowered and educated, and then we reach another person, right? And so with that being said, I always encourage people to don't be afraid of being a social martyr. And what that means is we all are faced with situations and hard conversations, or in our office place and at family dinners. We have the holidays will be coming up soon, Labor Day barbecues, and all these family get-togethers and traditions, and we have family members who are uninformed about various issues. And so when you have someone that's making a statement against every fiber of your moral conviction, don't be afraid to speak up in that moment, because you never know, you're speaking up and you're shedding light on something from a different perspective may change their perspective, and if we can all change one person, we'll be a much better country.
I love that. I think that makes all the difference in the world, because even if you know that you're not going to be the person changing someone's mind, you're saying something might mean that that they will think twice before saying this in front of someone else that could actually hurt or offend. So that does make a difference. Thanks so much for saying that.
No problem. We all have to plant seeds, right? Someone else comes and waters.
Yes. Oh, I love this. Nicole, thank you so much for being here. It was an absolute pleasure having you.
The feeling is absolutely mutual. I thank you for having me here, and I enjoyed my time with you.
Thank you so much. So remember, if you want to find out more about United Congress, you can go to unitedcongress.org. And we are Affinity Community Services. If you want to find out more about Affinity, you can find us at affinity95.org, or you can email me at Imani, I-M-A-N-I, at affinity95.org. Thank you so much. We are here the fourth Friday of the month at 6:30. So tune in again. Thanks so much.
Bye.